On the morning of May 7th, 2021, millions of Americans woke up completely unaware that one of the most disruptive cyber attacks in modern history had already begun. There were no explosions, no military strikes, no visible signs of sabotage. Yet within days, gas stations across the eastern United States would begin running dry. Long lines of vehicles would stretch for blocks. Fuel prices would rise. Emergency declarations would be issued. Panic buying would spread across multiple states. A cyber attack against a private company had suddenly become a national crisis. The target was Colonial Pipeline, one of the most critical pieces of energy infrastructure in the United States. The attackers never breached a pipeline control room. They never blew up equipment. They never physically entered a facility. Instead, they gained access through something far simpler: a password. This is the story of how a single compromised account triggered a chain reaction that affected millions of people and demonstrated just how vulnerable modern society can be to cybercrime. This is Case File 001. To understand why this attack became so significant, we first need to understand the company at its center. Colonial Pipeline operates one of the largest fuel transportation systems in the United States. The company's pipeline network stretches for more than 5,500 miles, connecting refineries along the Gulf Coast to major population centers on the East Coast. Every day, gasoline, diesel fuel, jet fuel, and other petroleum products travel through this network. The system supplies fuel to airports, hospitals, military facilities, businesses, and households. Nearly half of the fuel consumed on the East Coast depends on Colonial Pipeline's operations. For decades, the company functioned largely behind the scenes. Most Americans never thought about it. They simply expected fuel to be available whenever they needed it. That expectation would soon be challenged. At the same time, Colonial Pipeline was transporting fuel across the country. Another industry was experiencing explosive growth: cybercrime. Over the previous decade, ransomware had evolved from a relatively simple criminal scheme into a multi-billion-dollar global business. Early ransomware attacks were often opportunistic. Attackers infected random computers and demanded small payments from individual victims. But as organizations became more dependent on digital systems, cybercriminals realized they could earn far greater profits by targeting companies instead of individuals. Hospitals, schools, manufacturing plants, government agencies, critical infrastructure providers. No organization was off limits. Among the groups leading this new generation of cybercrime was a ransomware operation known as DarkSide. Unlike traditional hacking groups, DarkSide functioned more like a technology company. It maintained a professional online presence. It recruited affiliates. It provided technical support. It continuously improved its malware. DarkSide operated under a model known as ransomware as a service. The concept was simple. The group's developers created and maintained the ransomware platform. Affiliates carried out attacks. Any ransom payments were then shared between the two parties. This approach allowed the operation to scale rapidly. Instead of a single team conducting attacks, dozens of affiliates could launch campaigns simultaneously. The result was a highly profitable criminal ecosystem. DarkSide even attempted to portray itself as a responsible organization. It claimed to avoid hospitals and certain non-profit institutions. It published statements resembling corporate press releases. But despite the marketing, the reality remained the same. Its business model depended entirely on extortion. And in early 2021, Colonial Pipeline became one of its most significant targets. Investigators later determined that the attackers gained access through a compromised virtual private network account. The account reportedly used a password that had previously appeared in a data breach. Even more critically, the account did not require multi-factor authentication. The attackers did not need a sophisticated exploit. They did not need to discover an unknown vulnerability. They simply possessed valid credentials. With those credentials, they entered Colonial Pipeline's corporate network. This fact became one of the most important lessons from the entire incident. Many people imagine major cyber attacks as highly complex operations involving advanced hacking techniques. In reality, some of the most damaging attacks begin with basic security failures. A reused password, a missing security control, an overlooked account. Once inside the network, the attackers began conducting reconnaissance. Their objective was to understand the environment before deploying ransomware. Modern ransomware groups rarely attack immediately. Instead, they spend time gathering information. They identify valuable systems. They map the network. They search for backups. They look for sensitive data. The more information they collect, the more leverage they gain. For days, the attackers quietly explored Colonial Pipeline's environment. Meanwhile, employees continued their normal operations, completely unaware that an intrusion had already occurred. As the attackers moved through the network, they collected data that could later be used as additional leverage. This tactic, known as double extortion, had become increasingly common among ransomware groups. The strategy transformed ransomware from a simple encryption attack into a multi-layered pressure campaign. Victims now faced two threats: operational disruption and public exposure. Even organizations capable of restoring systems from backups could still face reputational damage if sensitive information was leaked. The attackers understood this, and they were preparing to use every advantage available. Then, on May 7th, 2021, the operation entered its final stage. The ransomware was deployed. Systems began to lock. Files became inaccessible. Business operations were disrupted. The incident response process began. What happened next would transform a corporate cybersecurity event into a nationwide emergency. The leadership team faced a difficult decision. Although the ransomware primarily affected business systems rather than operational control systems, there was significant uncertainty regarding the full scope of the compromise. Could the attackers reach additional systems? Could operations be affected? Could critical infrastructure be placed at risk? Faced with incomplete information, Colonial Pipeline chose caution. The company voluntarily shut down pipeline operations. From a security perspective, the decision was understandable. From a societal perspective, the consequences were enormous. Within hours, fuel deliveries began slowing across the eastern United States. Within days, public concern turned into panic, and a ransomware attack that started with a single compromised password became one of the most consequential cyber incidents in American history.